Hi Bodcasters, it's Raging Rich.
And me, T.A. Shelano.
And we're here just to say we'll be back on the 4th of February with Middle-aged Bodcast Season 3.
But in the meantime, here's a look back at another one of our guest interviews from Season 1 when Amy talked through her battle with breast cancer.
Oh, it's the Middle-aged Bodcast. Getting older, ever having a blast with Rich and T.A. You're never alone on this journey to feel better in mind, body, and soul. Turn it up and tune in, they're here to say the middle-aged life's not just okay. It's freaking great.
Welcome back to the Middle-aged Bodcast with your hosts, Raging Rich.
And me, T.A. Shelano.
And T.A., here we are, episode 6. We are over the halfway point of Season 1 of the podcast now.
Yeah, it's really ramping up now, isn't it? And we've got another guest episode to come today with Amy here to talk to us about physical health.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us this week, Amy.
No problem.
So T.A., I think, as per usual, the beginning of the show is the weekly weigh-in. And last week, of course, my faux pas with the Chinese takeaway and putting on 4 pounds. So I'm hoping that a bit of work this week has put me back on track. So what's the deal at the moment?
Well, drum roll, please. Thank you. So, T.A. Shelano is a non-mover this week. No weight on, no weight off. Must do better next week. And now, Raging Rich. And having not had a takeaway the night before the weigh-in this week, Raging Rich has lost 3 pounds. Wow. So the challenge is definitely on. As avid listeners will know, at the midway point of episode 5, we were neck and neck in the amount of weight lost so far during the season. But you've now snuck into an early lead at the beginning of the second half of the season and the challenge. So definitely more for me to do. Well done, Rich.
Thank you very much, T.A. It's been an interesting week. Obviously, started going back on the exercise bike, changed some of my habits up, trying to make some positive habits. I think certainly our chat with Laura the other week helped as well, taking some of the things she said on board. So yeah, really pleased with that. Just mentally preparing myself has sort of helped me out a lot.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, Rich, and I think it's only fair we did sort of give you a bit of a chiding for your Chinese takeaway. I had lunch with a colleague this week, and I had an extra helping of cheesecake, which had a phenomenal amount of calories in it and has blatantly not helped me with this week's weigh-in. So it was nice, but obviously regrettable in the consequence of the challenge. But anyway, that's enough about that. We can keep the listeners updated on our progress next time around. It's probably about time we went over to our special guest, Amy, who's joining us here live in the studio today. And I think Amy has very kindly agreed to talk through her own experience of personal health challenges as somebody who is now 8 years clear of cancer. So thank you for joining us, Amy.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be a part of this.
Well, thank you for being here, Amy. I think maybe we should start off with you telling us a little bit about your journey, please.
Yeah, well, I'm 43 years old now, but when I was 35, I was unfortunately diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer, which was a bit of a shock, not something that you want at that age. So I found a lump in my left breast, which was probably at that point the size of a walnut. This was sort of in the end of July of that year. I reacted really quickly and got in to see my GP, and thankfully they were really good. They examined me and said, look, it could be anything. It could be a cyst, could be just a bit of tissue that's kind of clotted, but we'll refer you to the hospital just to be on the safe side. And it's really good that they did kind of have that response, because I went to the hospital, had it biopsied, and then unfortunately they gave me the news that nobody really wants to hear. And then the whole sort of process was in motion, from finding my lump to having surgery was about 6 weeks, which was just phenomenal. And then after that, I then started a process of treatment. It took about 8 months of sort of everything that I had to encounter along that journey. And then fortunately, I've come out the other end, and I haven't had any issues of any reoccurrence. And for every year that goes past, you kind of get further away from the danger zone, which is good.
Well, thank you for that, Amy. Just wondering, sort of, how much do you feel your illness has changed your outlook on life?
Oh, massively. I mean, when, you're given those words, you've got cancer, it just puts so many things into perspective. First of all, it's kind of your own mortality, really. When you initially hear those words, you just think that you're going to die, and you kind of think, is this it? Is this my ending? I can't believe it, kind of thing. And then just loads of things that you've been worrying about and things that stress you out, it just all falls away. I definitely felt that when I was initially diagnosed, of like, you just got to put all this background noise out the way now and concentrate on yourself and getting better, and kind of learn that lesson from this of, stop getting so stressed about the small things in life. That is true, that saying, don't sweat the small stuff. And I think definitely as I've come out of treatment now, you don't get hung up about the things that you used to. And it's silly little things, you look for positives in every single day because you've had the benefit of knowing what can happen when that can sort of be taken away from you.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Amy. Just for some of our listeners who may not know what triple negative breast cancer is, could you just talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so there's lots of different types of breast cancer, but triple negative is probably one of the least known, and yet it's becoming, unfortunately, one of the more common ones, especially in younger women and women of certain ethnic groups. Triple negative breast cancer is where the cancer isn't hormone receptive. Without getting too scientific, there's proteins in your cells, and some cancers can grow based on those proteins being pushed with certain hormones in your body. But with triple negative, the level of hormone isn't there. So what that kind of means is that they can't give you medication which can stop the growth of that hormone in your system. So what that means is that there's less medical solutions sort of available to tackle triple negative breast cancer, and it is actually one of the most aggressive. In myself, it was very fast growing. So my course of treatment was to have surgery straight away to cut the cancer out, and then follow that up with chemotherapy and radiotherapy, which was kind of viewed as a belt and braces process of just throwing everything at it to try and stop the cancer from spreading in the body.
So aside from the sort of physical things that you talk about there that happen in terms of having an operation and the sort of the treatment, what else sort of helped you get through your illness?
I think the easiest thing to start with was once you'd kind of accepted the diagnosis, was the medical team setting your course of treatment. So a plan was in place, and it was just working towards the different goals along that plan. You're very much living in a world of tests and time frames. So like when I was having chemotherapy, you would have the medicine, and that would be a 3-week cycle. So you'd obviously have your injection of the drugs. After a few days, you'd start to feel really, really bad, suffering a number of side effects, which is different for all different people. And then towards the end of that 3-week period, you'd start to come out of it again, and you're feeling better. And then obviously they give you your next cycle, and then you're back into it. And that's kind of your life for a number of months. But it's through that time you kind of feel that you're fighting the illness, and you're going to be coming out the other side. So you start getting into kind of a better mindset in terms of trying to reach that end game. But it's also finding other things. I mean, I was off work for the duration of my illness. I was very fortunate that with my employer I could have that, because I know some people aren't quite so lucky with packages that they have in place with their employers. So I could use that time not only to deal with my treatment and rest, but also to get involved in other things. So I did exercise, lots of reading, just tried to find some other enjoyment. And of course I had the support of my friends and family. I was very lucky.
And Do you feel that your experience of things has more value now than it did before because you may not have had these moments again?
It's funny, I've had this discussion with some friends of mine that I actually met through my hospital, who are breast cancer support group, and we sort of talk about that, and I think it's only from having that lived experience that you can kind of look back on it in this way, but we've all said that we're very lucky to have met each other. It's horrible the way that we have, but we feel that we've benefited from that and we gain strength from that, and we have tried to help other people as well who have been at the start of their journey. And I think that was what was important for me and why I did seek out the support group, because initially it was put to me and I was like, oh no, I'll be fine. And then kind of when I was going through treatment and you're spending a lot of time on your own and you're trying to be strong, and whilst you know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, it's like you can't quite see that. And it was important for me to meet people that were living a life after cancer and getting older and it wasn't affecting them anymore. It was so important to see people that had come out of it and were now living, because you were stuck in a world where you were trying to fight this thing. You go into a hospital sitting with lots of people that are going through cancer at all different stages and just thinking, am I ever going to come out of this? Am I ever going to be clear? So yeah, it was important.
So you think you're talking about almost a merging of the physical health issue that you're facing, which is threatening your life, versus then the impact that would have on your mental health. How do you think you would have coped if you didn't have that support network? Do you think your mental health would have suffered and could then adversely affect your sort of physical recovery?
I think so, because I was going through a lot of things at the same time, because I was only 35, which was very young to kind of be going through this, and it was at a time in my life where I hadn't been married very long. Me and my husband were looking to buy a house and start a family, and of course cancer put a stop to all of that. So straight away I had to deal with that, and that my life was about to change. And then because of my illness, certain options were no longer available to me anymore. And that was very difficult to deal with. And when I sort of talk about this at that time in my life, having children was very important to me. I actually, after having my surgery and before starting chemotherapy, I went through fertility preservation as that was offered to me, because I wanted to try and safeguard my fertility before I went through chemotherapy. But that delayed all that. So all my kind of ambitions of starting a family all had to be put on hold for years and years. And then coming out of that and dealing with the repercussions of treatment, it's really difficult. And I think without having support groups to talk to, and especially people that are going through the same thing as you. I mean, I did have some really difficult times, and I found an online group on Facebook called the Triple Negative Warriors, which is a forum of women that obviously have all got my cancer and of all age groups, and particularly around being in your 30s and fertility and all those kind of issues. It was being discussed, and I took real reassurance from a lot of the things that people were saying, and felt very hopeful about things for the future, and that maybe if your life went down a different path to what you kind of imagined it to be, would that be the worst thing in the world? No, because you've been through this process, and if you do come out and cancer doesn't touch your life again, then you're one of the very lucky ones, and you've got to learn to enjoy that and relish everything about your life, because a lot of people aren't as lucky as that.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that story there. I'm sure there's much there that some of our listeners will be able to resonate with, whether they've been through similar experience themselves or people that they know. Just sort of keen to understand a bit more about what you've been doing sort of since your treatment and your recovery, of how you've approached your sort of physical health and well-being. If you can talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I always kept relatively fit. I used to regularly go to the gym and swimming and things like that. And I think when you're first sort of dealing with cancer, you think, why me? And then through sort of, the support groups and people that I've met along the way that I've sort of been talking about, you learn that, it can happen to anyone. I've come across people that, are fitness fanatics, vegetarians, never drank, never smoked. Then you've got the people that smoke every day, drink, eat cake. You know, cancer is kind of everywhere now. There's so many aggressors in modern life. It's really difficult to sort of not be affected by it because our bodies just can't cope with it all now. And I think that's the thing. I kind of spent so long thinking, well, why me? What can I do? And initially, you know, through a lot of reading I was doing, it was cutting out certain things and changing my lifestyle. And then it was getting to a point of, well, I do still want some enjoyment. I mean, I still drink alcohol, which is obviously a high-risk carcinogen, which is linked to cancer. You know, they tell you this all the time, but, you know, that is my choice. I've tried to be a bit more mindful of my drinking, which is easier said than done sometimes. But in other regards, I've tried to improve my diet, eating less processed foods, eating particular foods that are really good antitoxins for your body and keeping your cells strong. I do a lot of fasting as well. I get a lot of advice from people that I follow on Instagram, people who've been through cancer or people that are professionals in that field. So it's just getting a lot of information from different sources and sort of working out what works for you and your lifestyle and what you want to do. And again, it's just improving my health as much as I can. I'm, you know, doing regular exercise, and through having treatment, I'm conscious that I'm at risk of a few things, osteoporosis being one of them, having really weak bones after having chemotherapy, because it is really detrimental to your body as much as it's saving your life. So I try and do a lot of weight training to maintain strength in my bones, to kind of future plan for myself. And I also take part in exercises that aren't weight bearing, just so that you're sort of improving your overall muscle mass in your body.
How difficult a balance do you find it to strike then between this trying to look after your physical health in terms of having been through the experience that you've been through versus still trying to enjoy your life as well?
Yeah, it was really difficult to begin with because you just felt like everything you were doing was going to give you cancer again. Like, sometimes when I'd like wake up with a hangover, I would feel so bad because it was like, why are you doing this to yourself? You know, you're potentially making yourself ill again. And the only kind of example I can use is like every time you get into a car doesn't necessarily mean you're going to crash. And not that I'm promoting that bad habits is something that people should do mindlessly. I think, you know, you should be mindful of what you're putting into your body and the lifestyle that you're leading, because there's definitely negative things you do that could contribute to poor health, but it's just kind of having that awareness and making that conscious choice, because I think otherwise it can drive you mad. You just worry about everything all of the time, and you have got to enjoy life to a degree.
So Amy, what advice would you give to people out there if they are going through something similar to yourself, or they know of someone who's going through cancer treatment at the moment? What kind of advice could you give to somebody going through that?
I think the important thing is to listen to your body. Your body is quite amazing. When I look back now, I think my body was giving me some signs that things weren't right. I mean, I was very lucky because I had a lump that appeared, you know, it came out of nowhere and it was there. It was like, come on, deal with me. And I know some people aren't as lucky as that, especially with cancer. It can be a little bit sinister and it tends to hide. But I think if you don't feel like something is right, you've got to go to the doctors and get checked out. And if what they tell you initially you're still not happy with, you've really got to be your own advocate and push till you kind of get a response that you're happy with. I've learned this along the way with people that were undergoing treatment as well. They were sort of being told one thing and they weren't quite happy with it. It didn't sit right with them, and you know, some of the side effects and things they were having with their bodies, and they really pushed. And there are always alternatives, second opinions. So yeah, I think you've just got to keep an eye on yourself and look after yourself. You know, the body it protects you and you have to trust it and look after it.
Are there any things that happened during your recovery where, you know, people did anything that was insensitive or didn't help or upset you at all, or since?
Yeah, I had some comments just about like, oh, can you wear your wig because by being bald it will upset other people. And it's like, well, don't you think it's upsetting me? I'm the one that's lost my hair. And when I'd lost my eyebrows and my eyelashes, you know, you did look different and you were very puffy faced, and people said, oh, you look really ill at the moment. It's like, actually, this is a sign that I'm getting better. You know, this is, you know, the price that you have to pay in order to get better. So that was difficult. But I think a lot of that is kind of people's just misunderstanding around cancer and treatment. The funny thing with me was, you know, the cancer was taken out of my body when I had the surgery. I was very lucky that I was only stage 1, which meant it was within my breast tissue only. It hadn't spread anywhere else. So the purpose of my treatment was just to ensure there were no rogue cancer cells in my body. But it's like, in my head, I wasn't ill anymore. I was just kind of going through this process to get better. I mean, I think I was more fortunate than some other people that I've spoken to. They had some real difficulty with their loved ones. I mean, surprisingly, a lot of the women that I came into contact with had lost their partners, like their husbands, just couldn't cope with it, like that lack of physical contact, having to deal with sort of side effects of treatment and watching your partner go through it is really difficult for people. So a lot of women kind of got left on their own to deal with things, and I'm just grateful like I didn't have to go through any of that.
I think it's interesting to see at this point as well that, and we covered this in a previous episode, but it's just that you don't know what somebody else is going through in their life and how important it is to consider that and be kind to people. And I think we'd probably like to add, obviously, a disclaimer here, and I'm sure Amy will join us, that if you are worried about your health, we've obviously spoke very deeply here around breast cancer, but if there are any issues that you're encountering with your health, whether it's indicative of breast cancer or other cancers or other conditions, we would obviously recommend that you do speak to an appropriate medical professional. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Amy, for joining us here today and for sharing your story.
Oh no, thank you for having me. I'm really grateful to have kind of had this opportunity to tell my story, and I'm coming up to my 8-year anniversary this year, and I just want to kind of give that optimism to people who may have just been diagnosed or going through treatment or are just scared about things that are currently happening in their life, that it's only for a very short period and you've just got to face it, put all your strength together to get yourself through it, and then when you come out the other side, you're stronger for it and you enjoy life.
Well, T.A., I'm sure you'll agree it's been a really interesting conversation here today with Amy.
Yeah, another great guest episode there. Really enjoying the guest episodes, actually, Rich, getting different perspectives on really important topics. But I suppose we should now talk about the next episode of the Middle-aged Bodcast. Unbelievably, we're going to be up at episode 7, where we'll obviously be talking a little bit more about our weight loss challenge, but also we're moving to a topic around recreation. I'm not going to say too much more at this point, so we'll keep it vague if people can join us and have a listen to that. So really looking forward to that. And final word to Amy.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for having me, and can everyone just please take a bit of responsibility for their own health, especially for women. You know, perhaps just once a month check your breasts and give them a proper examination. I'd say only do it once a month, because then you will notice any changes, and obviously if you do find anything that you're not happy with, make sure that you contact your doctor. And this doesn't exclude you men either. Men can also get breast cancer, so you should check your chest area, and also you should be checking downstairs as well. I know a lot of men just reluctant to deal with anything health-wise or go to the doctors, but you really need to be your own advocates and look after yourselves.
Two best mates, yeah, they take you to stand. Rich and T.A, got your health in the hands. Weigh-ins, laughs, and tales they tell. For beats and nights, the workouts, they're keeping it real. Oh, it's the middle